The grand hall of the alien palace was loud with laughter, shining lights, and proud voices. But the human named Ethan walked forward with calm steps. He was the only human in the room, and every pair of alien eyes watched him like he did not belong there. Tall alien nobles stood in jeweled armor. Servants bowed low, and musicians played strange instruments that sounded like metal wind. But Ethan did not look afraid. He kept his back straight, his face relaxed, and his eyes focused ahead. The alien emperor sat on a high throne made of black crystal. His crown was sharp like teeth, and his smile was cold. He looked down at Ethan as if he were something small. The nobles whispered, amused that a simple human was standing in their sacred hall. Some laughed, some smirked, and some pointed as if he were a circus animal who wandered in by mistake. But Ethan stayed silent. The emperor lifted his hand, and the hall became quiet. "So this is the human," the emperor said loudly, his voice echoing. "The creature who thinks he can make deals with us." Ethan did not bow. He only nodded once, respectful but firm. "I am here to talk peace," he said in a steady voice. "Our worlds do not need war." The hall burst into laughter again. Alien nobles slapped their knees. Some even wiped tears of humor from their eyes. "Peace," one alien scoffed. "With a weak race like humans." Another sneered, "Humans should beg, not negotiate." But Ethan's expression did not change. His heartbeat was steady, his breathing calm. He looked around the hall slowly, meeting every eye without fear. The aliens stopped laughing for a moment. Confused by his lack of shame, the emperor leaned back with boredom. "Very well," he said. "If the human wants peace, let us test his dignity." Whispers raced through the hall. Some nobles leaned forward, eager. Others covered their mouths to hide cruel smiles. It was clear something unkind was coming. The emperor snapped his fingers. "Bring my daughter," he commanded. "Yes, the obese one." The hall exploded with laughter again. Some aliens laughed so hard they had to hold on to pillars to stand. Others mimicked heavy breathing and waddling steps as a joke. Ethan still did not react. His eyes only narrowed slightly, not in disgust, but in curiosity. Guards marched out of a side door. There was a pause, a silence, and then slow, uneven footsteps echoed. The hall grew quieter, not out of respect, but from anticipation of mockery. The emperor smirked. "She will be his reward," he announced. "Let us see the human reject her in shame." The nobles waited like hungry animals, ready to enjoy humiliation. Ethan stood still, watching the doorway. Then she appeared. The alien daughter walked with difficulty, her body fuller than the others, her shoulders bent and her eyes fixed on the floor. Her hands shook and she tried to hide behind her long hair. She clearly expected laughter, rejection, and disgust. Her dress was too tight at the arms, and her steps looked painful, as if each movement hurt. The hall filled with snickering. But Ethan did not laugh, he did not flinch, he did not turn away. Instead, he looked at her face, not her size, not her trembling legs, not her lowered head, only her eyes. And in those eyes he saw fear, loneliness, and someone who had been mocked for a long time. The emperor watched eagerly. "Go on," he said, voice dripping with amusement. "Look at her. She is your gift. Do humans enjoy such creatures?" Ethan's voice was soft but clear. "What is your name?" he asked the girl gently. The hall froze. No one had ever asked her that, not in kindness. "Not in public." The girl looked up in shock, her lips parting, eyes wide like she had heard a language she never knew existed. The nobles stared. The emperor frowned. Confused, Ethan took one calm step toward her, and the hall felt different, like the air itself shifted. Because for the first time, Someone did not laugh. Someone did not judge. Someone saw her, and the aliens did not understand. Why was the human smiling? The alien daughter stood frozen in the middle of the hall, her breathing unsteady, her hands shaking at her sides. She had lived her whole life expecting laughter, insults, and disgust. Every feast, every ceremony, every gathering had treated her like a joke. She was used to being pointed at, mocked, and hidden away. She knew the pattern. Someone looked at her. Then came the laughter. Then came the shame. So when the humans spoke to her gently, her body did not know how to react. Her voice was barely a whisper. My name. She could not finish the sentence. Her throat tightened, and she looked down again, terrified that if she spoke, the room would explode in laughter again. Ethan took another slow step forward, his expression calm, warm, and steady. "It's all right," he said softly. "You can tell me." The hall went quiet again, not because of respect, but because everyone was stunned that a human would address her as if she mattered. The alien emperor leaned forward, annoyed, confused, and curious all at once. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. They did not understand this human reaction. The girl swallowed. "Myra," she finally said. My name is Myra." Ethan nodded gently, as if he had just been given something precious. "That's a beautiful name, Tisa." Gasps echoed around the hall. Several nobles looked horrified. One dropped his jeweled goblet. Another choked on his drink. The emperor's eye twitched. No one had ever called her beautiful, not her name. Not her face, not her body, not anything about her. She stared at Ethan like he spoke impossible words. Then she remembered this was a setup. She stepped back, breathing faster. "You don't need to pretend," she whispered. "I know why they brought me. You don't have to act kind." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I'm not pretending." Myra blinked, trying to understand. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her legs trembled, and she almost stumbled. But Ethan reached out and steadied her arm, not forcefully, not with pity, but with gentle support. The hall erupted in shocked gasps. Again, humans were not allowed to touch royal blood. The emperor stood up halfway from the throne. "Human," he growled, "you forget your place." But Ethan did not look away from Myra. "You're trembling," he said softly. "Are you in pain?" Myra looked around, terrified. No one had ever asked her that either. Pain was weakness. In the Empire, people laughed at weakness. She shook her head quickly, afraid of punishment. But Ethan could see that her knees shook. Her shoulders tightened, and her breath came in small gasps. "You don't have to hide," he said gently. "You're safe." Safe. Another word she had never heard directed at her. Her eyes began to fill with tears. She tried desperately to blink away. Behind them, the nobles whispered, "Why is he speaking to her like she matters? Is he blind?" No, he must be mocking her in a new way. Maybe humans enjoy disgusting things. The emperor smiled again, trying to regain control. "Very well, human," he said. "If you truly like this creature, then take her hand and accept her before the court." The nobles grinned, waiting for the moment of humiliation. They expected Ethan to hesitate, refuse, or step away. But Ethan didn't even pause. He reached out and took Myra's hand gently, carefully, like she was something delicate and important. The hall fell dead silent. Myra froze again, eyes wide, breath trapped in her chest. No one had ever held her hand, not even her own family. Her fingers trembled inside his, and her heart hammered so fast she thought she would collapse. The emperor clenched his jaw. "Human," he said slowly, "do you understand what you just accepted?" Ethan finally looked up at him, calm and steady. "I understand perfectly." He said. Myra stared at him, struggling to breathe. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you choose me?" Ethan looked into her eyes, not flinching, not laughing, and his answer made the entire hall lean forward, but he did not speak it. Aloud, he leaned in and whispered something. Only she could hear. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, her legs nearly gave out. The Emperor slammed his fist on the throne. "What did you say to her, human?" Ethan straightened, still holding Myra's hand, and the hall filled with tension so heavy that no one dared to breathe. The hall felt like it stopped breathing. Every alien I stared at Ethan, at Mira, and at their joined hands. No one understood what they were seeing. No human should have dared. No alien would have chosen her. The Emperor himself looked as if the world beneath him had shifted. Ethan turned to face the throne, still holding Mira's hand with steady confidence. "I choose her," he said clearly, loud enough for every noble to hear. "In front of your court, in front of your throne, and in front of your empire." Shock rippled through the hall like a wave. Some nobles gasped. Some stepped back. Some stared in disbelief. No one laughed now. Mira's heart raced in her chest. She could barely stand. She tugged gently at Ethan's hand, whispering urgently. "You don't understand," she said with shaking breath. "You can't choose me. They will punish you. They will punish me. You don't know what they do to anyone who stands with me." Ethan looked at her calmly. "I know what I'm doing," he said softly. Myra shook her head harder, fear rising in her eyes. "No, you don't. I am not allowed to be chosen. I am not allowed to stand here. My father, he just wants the court to laugh. He wants you to feel shame. You must refuse me before it is too late." Ethan didn't let go. The Emperor stood slowly, his cloak falling behind him like a shadow. "Human," he said, voice cold and sharp. "You misunderstand the situation. My daughter was presented to amuse the court. She is not a prize. She is a warning." The nobles nodded, smirking again, recovering their sense of superiority. "She is weak," one whispered. "She is broken," said another. "A ka. She is a disgrace to the royal line," hissed a third. But Ethan looked at them with steady, unshaken eyes. "She is a person," he replied. "And I honor her." The murmurs halted. Myra felt her knees weaken again. No one had ever defended her, not a servant, not a friend, not a sibling, not even her own mother. She felt her throat tighten, and her eyes burned as if tears threatened to escape. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "You think this makes you noble?" he growled. "You think choosing trash makes you virtuous?" Ethan didn't blink. "I think kindness makes someone strong," he answered. The court recoiled as if struck. The Emperor signaled his guards. "Remove her," he ordered. "And remove the human if he resists." Armored soldiers began to advance, their boots striking the marble floor like approaching thunder. Mira stepped away from Ethan, terrified. "Please," she whispered to him, "don't fight them. They will hurt you because of me." But Ethan stepped in front of her, shielding her with his own body. The guards hesitated. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to be afraid. But this one stood like a wall, unshakable, unmoving, ready to face an entire army if he had to. The Emperor snarled, "Seize him." The guards raised their weapons, but then stopped. Their hands shook. Their eyes widened. They stepped back as if something unseen pushed them away. A faint glow began to spread from behind Ethan. He turned to see Myra, her skin shimmering with a soft, unfamiliar light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, growing brighter with every second. Gasps echoed through the hall. "That's impossible. She cannot have that power. She was tested, she had none." Mira looked just as shocked as everyone else. She touched her chest, confused, trembling. I don't understand, she whispered. This has never happened before. Ethan looked at her gently. Maybe no one ever treated you like you mattered, he said quietly. Maybe that is what awakened it. The Emperor stumbled back a step, face pale with rage and fear. No, he shouted. This cannot be. She was born weak. She was born useless. Mira looked up, breathing hard, tears mixing with the glow around her. I was never weak, she said softly. I was just alone. The hall trembled with silence. Ethan stepped beside her again, steady and calm. The nobles stared at them, uncertain, shaken, frightened. The Emperor gripped his throne with white knuckles. This was no longer a joke. This was a threat. And everyone felt it. Hook settles in the air. If this was the power she awakened just by being treated with kindness, what would happen if she chose to stand beside the human? After the hall fell into shocked silence, the Emperor ordered the court dismissed. The nobles rushed out, whispering in fear and confusion. The guards stayed alert, unsure whether they should obey the Emperor or keep their distance from the glowing princess. Ethan stayed close to Mira as she trembled, the light around her fading slowly until only a faint shimmer remained. The Emperor pointed toward a side doorway. You, he ordered coldly. Take her to the chamber. The human may follow. I want to see what trick causes this light. It was not trust. It was not concern. It was control. Myra lowered her head and walked slowly, and Ethan followed beside her. The corridor was long and quiet, lit by blue lanterns that hummed like distant storms. Mira's breathing was uneven, and her steps were slow and painful. Ethan noticed the way she held her side, as if every movement hurt. When they reached a private room, it was cold and empty except for a low bed and a metal chair. The Emperor stayed outside with guards, watching, waiting. Mira sat carefully, trying not to wince, but Ethan saw it anyway. You're hurt, he said softly. She shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. No, I'm fine. I don't want them to hear. If they think I complain, they will take food from me again. Ethan felt a cold anger grow inside him, not loud, not violent, but deep. He lowered his voice. How long has it hurt? Mira looked away. Years, she whispered. Since the fall. Ethan knelt beside her. What fall? Myra hesitated. No one had ever asked. No one had ever cared. Her voice shook. When I was young, I slipped from the high stairs in the palace. I broke bone. Here. She touched her hip and lower back. The healer said I was slow, weak, useless. They said it was better to hide me than waste medicine. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, steadying his breath. So your body became larger because you couldn't move without pain, he said gently. Mira nodded, shame flooding her face. Yes, they said I was obese, lazy, disgusting. They said I embarrassed the Emperor. Ethan looked at her with steady eyes. You were injured, he said. You were never lazy. Mira stared at him, confused, hopeful, afraid to believe it. You don't understand, she whispered. Everyone says it. Everyone laughs. It must be true. Ethan shook his head. Pain changes how the body moves, he explained softly. Your size is not a shame. It is a sign that you survived. Myra's breath caught. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly. I'm not supposed to cry, she whispered. Crying makes them angry. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a small human medical scanner, simple, portable, glowing faint green. Mira stared at it as if it were forbidden magic. May I check your injury? Aha, he asked gently. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Ethan held the scanner near her lower back and hip. The soft light passed over her skin through the fabric, and a small screen lit up with readings. Ethan's eyes tightened. The bone had never healed. It had fused wrong. Every step she took caused sharp pain. Her muscles were strained from years of compensating. Her body grew heavier because movement was torture. He looked at her, voice soft but firm. "This wasn't your fault," he said. "Anyone with this injury would struggle." Myra covered her mouth as if the truth was too big to hold. I thought I was broken," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "You were abandoned," he said. "Not broken." Outside the room, the Emperor grew impatient. "Well, he barked. "What is wrong with her?" Ethan stood, his face calm but unyielding. "She needs healing," he said, "and support, and respect." The Emperor laughed. "She needs to be hidden," he snapped. "She shames my bloodline." Myra flinched at the words, but Ethan stepped in front of her again. Blocking the Emperor's view, she glowed in the hall. Ethan said, "You saw it. They all did." Something awakened. The Emperor's eyes hardened. "That is why she is dangerous." Myra's breath trembled. "Dangerous," she whispered. The Emperor leaned closer, voice like a blade. "If the court learns that she carries ancient royal power, they will demand she inherit the throne." Myra stared in shock. But they hate me." The Emperor snarled. "Power is all that matters. They learn you have it, I lose everything." Ethan whispered to her, "You were never unwanted. You were feared." The Emperor slammed the door. Myra gasped, because now she understood if her power returned fully, the Emperor might try to silence her forever. The chamber door shook from the force of the Emperor's anger. Outside, guards shifted nervously, unsure whether to enter or wait. Inside, Myra sat frozen on the bed, her hands gripping the blankets, her breathing quick and shallow. Ethan stood between her and the door, calm but alert, prepared for whatever came next. The Emperor's voice roared through the metal. She must not leave that room. Guards enter and take her to confinement. Heavy steps pounded the floor. The guards positioned themselves, weapons ready. But none of them opened the door yet. A strange hesitation filled the air. Ethan looked toward Myra. "They're afraid," he said quietly. "Not of me, of what you might become." Myra shook her head in disbelief. "But I am weak," she whispered. "I can barely walk without pain." Ethan knelt beside her, speaking softly. "You stood your whole life in pain. That is strength." Myra's eyes filled again, but this time it was not from shame, it was from something new and unfamiliar. Hope. Before she could speak, the door swung open. The Emperor stormed in with a wave of guards behind him. His eyes blazed with fury, but there was something else beneath it, fear. He pointed directly at Myra. "Take her." The guards approached, but Ethan stepped forward, blocking their path. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't threaten. He simply stood, there unmoving, unafraid. A human shouldn't have been able to stop trained alien soldiers. But none of the guards stepped closer. One guard whispered to another, voice tense, "What if she glows again? What if it means she has the ancient blood? What if touching her marks us as traitors?" The Emperor heard them and shouted, "She is nothing. She is a mistake. She is a shame to my name." Myra flinched, her shoulders curling inward, old habits of fear returning. Ethan turned his head slightly toward her. "You don't have to believe him," he said softly. "Not anymore." The Emperor slammed his fist into the wall. "She has nitrogen monoxide right to stand in this palace. No right to the throne. No right to breathe royal air." Ethan's eyes hardened, not loud anger, but steady, controlled fire. "She has every right," he said. "She is alive. She feels, she thinks, she matters." The guards froze again. Some looked at the Emperor. Some looked at Myra and some looked at Ethan with a dawning realization. Humans were not as weak as they had been told. The Emperor's voice dropped to a low, dangerous growl. "Human, step away. This is not your fight." Ethan shook his head once. "She was mocked in your hall. She was injured as a child and left without care. She was starved, hidden, humiliated. That makes it my fight." The Emperor's face twisted. "You speak as if she is valuable." Ethan answered without hesitation. "She is valuable." Mira's breath caught. No one had ever spoken those words about her not in her entire life. The pain in her hips seemed to lessen, replaced by warmth spreading through her chest. The Emperor snapped his fingers again. "Guards, seize him." But something unexpected happened. The guards did not move. They looked at each other, uncertain, afraid, unwilling. One stepped back. Another lowered his weapon. A third bowed his head slightly toward Myra, not fully. Not openly, but enough to show doubt. The Emperor's eyes went wide with rage. "You dare disobey me." The guard who stepped back whispered, "If she carries the ancient power, then harming her may be treason." The Emperor turned red with fury. "She carries nothing." But at that moment, Mira gasped softly. The faint glow returned, not bright, not explosive, but enough to shine through her hair and outline her body with gentle light. The guards stepped back further. The Emperor's voice cracked. "No, no, it cannot be." Mira looked at her hands, glowing like moonlight. "I don't know how to stop it," she whispered. Ethan spoke gently. "You don't have to stop it." The Emperor pointed a shaking finger at her. "If the court sees this, they will demand that you sit on the throne instead of me." Mira looked terrified. "I don't want a throne," she said. "I only want to live without shame." The Emperor stared, stunned. Such simplicity, such honesty was more threatening than ambition. Ethan stepped beside her again, offering silent support. The Emperor backed away, breath uneven. "This is not finished," he hissed. "I will not lose my power to a broken girl and a stubborn human." He stormed out, robes trailing behind him, and the guards followed, still unsure. Still shaken, the chamber went quiet again. Myra looked at Ethan, voice trembling. "Why did they step back?" She whispered. "Why were they afraid?" Ethan answered softly, "Because strength looks different than they thought." Mira swallowed. "And what happens now?" Ethan looked toward the door, knowing the palace was changing, knowing the Emperor was plotting, knowing danger was far from over. "We prepare," he said, "because this is only the beginning." The palace grew restless after the confrontation. Whispers filled the halls like cold wind, slipping under doors and through corridors. Servants carried rumors with trembling voices. Nobles shut themselves inside their chambers, unsure which side to stand on. Some feared the Emperor's wrath. Others feared something far greater. Myra, inside the chamber. The glow around her slowly faded again, leaving her looking tired and confused. Ethan stayed close, watching her breathing, making sure she sat comfortably. He handed her a small human nutrient patch, and she looked at it like it was a precious gem. "What is it?" she asked softly. "It helps with weakness," Ethan said. "Your body needs strength." Myra held it carefully, almost afraid to use it. "No one ever offered me something to help," she whispered. "They only offered jokes or silence." Ethan smiled gently. "You deserve help," he said. She placed the patch against her skin, and warmth spread through her body. For the first time in years, the sharp pain in her hips softened. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing became smoother. She looked at Ethan with disbelief. "It doesn't hurt." "Not as much," she said. "Is this what other people feel every day?" Ethan nodded softly. "This is what you should have felt." Before she could answer, the door opened again, this time not with force, but with hesitation. An elderly alien scholar entered, robes dragging along the floor, eyes wide with curiosity and fear. The Emperor stood behind him, arms folded, jaw tight. The scholar bowed slightly, not to the Emperor, but to Mira. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "may I examine the energy you displayed?" Mira's eyes widened. "Why? Why did you call me that?" she asked. The scholar swallowed, because only one born of the first line may produce that light. The Emperor snapped. "She has nitrogen monoxide claim." But the scholar continued. Ignoring him, the ancient queens carried a glow that appeared only when their hearts were awakened by truth, or by loyalty. Myra blinked, stunned. "I never glowed before." She whispered. The scholar nodded. "Because you were never seen before, never valued, never protected. A royal heart does not awaken in loneliness." The Emperor shoved the scholar aside. "This is nonsense. She is weak." But the scholar shook his head. "She is the rightful heir." The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavy, the silence sharp enough to cut. Mira looked terrified. "I don't want to rule," she said quickly. "I don't want power. I only want peace." Ethan placed a steady hand near hers, not touching this time, just close enough for support. "You don't have to take a throne," he said softly, "but you have a right to choose your own life." Myra looked at him, breathing unevenly. "No one ever gave me a choice," she whispered. The Emperor clenched his fists. "You will not make choices. I built this empire. I paid in blood. I will not be replaced by a broken girl." The glow returned stronger this time. Mira gasped as light spread from her chest down her arms, swirling like living stars. The scholar fell to his knees in awe. The guards outside stepped back again. Even the Emperor trembled. Ethan didn't move away. He stood calm, watching her, not with fear, but with respect. Myra's voice shook. "I don't know how to stop it." "You don't need to," Ethan said softly. "It's part of you." Tears spilled down her glowing cheeks. "Why did you choose me?" she whispered. "You could have chosen any other girl, any strong one, any beautiful one, any perfect one." Ethan met her eyes. "I didn't choose you because of how you look," he said. "I chose you because you were alone, and no one should face the world alone." Mira covered her mouth, overwhelmed. The glow grew brighter, lighting the entire chamber, shining into the hallway, reaching even the highest towers of the palace. The Emperor stepped back, voice cracking with panic. "If the court sees this, if the people see this, if the army learns," he didn't finish, because he already knew they would follow Myra, not him. Myra looked at Ethan, trembling. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan answered with calm certainty. "Now, you decide who you are." The glow faded slowly, leaving only silence. But outside the chamber, the sound of footsteps echoed. Many footsteps. The nobles were returning. The court wanted answers, and the palace was about to witness something it had never seen before. The sound of footsteps grew louder in the hallway, many feet, many voices moving toward the chamber like a rising tide. Mira sat still, her hands clasped together, her breathing tight. Ethan stood beside her, calm and steady, watching the doorway. The Emperor paced like a trapped animal, his eyes darting, his voice trembling with anger he could no longer control. "They cannot see her glowing," he muttered. "If they see it, they will call for the ancient law. They will demand a new ruler. They will strip me of the throne." The scholar bowed again toward Myra, ignoring the Emperor. "The court approaches to confirm what they heard," he said softly. "They will want to see the truth with their own eyes." Myra's voice was quiet and frightened. "I never wanted power. I never wanted attention. I only wanted to live without shame. Ethan nodded gently. You don't have to take power, he said. But you can take freedom. Myra looked at him, eyes wide, as if the word itself was a strange foreign language. Freedom, she repeated softly, before she could say more. The door swung open and the court flooded in nobles, advisors, officers, and servants. They filled the room, lining the walls, climbing the stairs, surrounding the space like a living sea. Every face carried fear, curiosity, or anticipation. The emperor raised his hands, trying to command the room. There is nothing to see, he shouted. My daughter is weak and ordinary. The rumors are lies. But the nobles did not look at him. They looked at Myra. Some gasped at the sight of her sitting upright. Some stared at Ethan, shocked he still stood beside her. Some whispered, she looks different. She looks stronger. She looks alive. One of the royal generals stepped forward, voice low but firm. We heard she carries the ancient light. We heard the power has returned to the bloodline. The emperor tried to speak, but another noble interrupted. If this is true, she cannot be hidden. The empire must acknowledge her. A third voice rose. If she glows again, the throne by ancient law belongs to her. The emperor shook with rage. She will not glow. She cannot. She is nothing. But then something happened that no one expected. Myra stood, slowly, carefully, without shaking, without collapsing, without fear. The room fell silent as she took a step forward. The pain in her hip was still there, but weaker now. The nutrient patch and the relief of being seen gave her new strength. For the first time in her life, she stood tall. She looked at the court not with shame, but with gentle sadness. All my life, she said softly, you looked away from me. You laughed. You whispered. You pretended I did not exist. No one spoke. Her voice grew a little stronger. I was injured when I was young. I needed help. I needed care. But you called me weak. You called me obese. You called me a disgrace. Some nobles lowered their heads. Some wiped their eyes. Some shifted. Guilty and uncomfortable, Myra continued. But the human saw me. He spoke to me. He treated me like I mattered. And because of that, something inside me awoke. A faint glow spread across her skin, soft, warm, gentle, like dawn rising over a quiet sky. The court gasped. Some fell to their knees. Some whispered prayers. Some bowed deeply. The emperor stepped back as if struck. No, no, she cannot. This was supposed to die with the old queens. But Myra turned not toward the throne, but toward Ethan Dotton. She spoke the words that changed everything. I do not want the crown, she said. I do not want power. I only choose my own life, and I choose to leave with him. A wave of shock swept through the hall. No one had expected that answer, not the court, not the guards, not even the emperor. The general spoke again, voice respectful. By ancient law, if the rightful heir refuses the throne, the empire must honor her path and protect her choice. The emperor's face twisted in helpless fury. You cannot leave. You belong to the palace. Myra looked at him, eyes calm and steady. I belonged to pain, she said. I belonged to silence. But not anymore. Ethan extended his hand, gentle, steady. Patient Myra took it, not trembling, not afraid. The court stepped aside, forming a path. The emperor shouted, cried out, threatened, but no one obeyed him now. Myra and Ethan walked through the palace halls, through the great gates, and into the open air. The sky above was wide and endless, and Myra breathed it in like she had never tasted air before. Outside, a small human shuttle waited. Myra looked at it, nervous but hopeful. "Will I be safe out there?" she asked. Ethan smiled softly. "You will be free." She stepped inside. He followed. The engines HUMM. The palace shrank below them. Myra looked out the window one last time and whispered, "Thank you." "For seeing me," Ethan answered. "You were always worth seeing." The shuttle rose into the sky, and across the empire whispers began, not of mockery, but of the human end. The glowing girl, Woe, chose her own life.